Welcome to the Deep Dive, brought to you today by the Drawd Zone. Today we're really diving into Aston Martin, specifically their big strategy for the 2026 Formula One regulation changes. We've got these statements from their technical director, ENRICO, and honestly, they're packed with this, well, almost unheard of level of confidence.
That's right. It's not just optimism, is it? It feels very deliberate. Our mission today is really to unpack that mindset because it seems official, planned. This isn't just team hype. It feels like a declaration, really. A long-term strategy built on, let's be honest, high-risk innovation.
Yeah, high risk is the word.
And it definitely contrasts with the usual, the safer, incremental development we often see in F1.
It's pretty bold. I mean, CARDILE's core statements, they're just so blunt. He says, we will do well next year. And then that kicker, failure is not an option. Now, okay, every team says they want to win, obviously. But when you dig into the actual strategy they're outlining, especially this willingness to make big technical bets.
Well, that's where it gets really interesting, I think. Exactly. And what's fascinating is they aren't, hiding the risk involved. They're openly saying, look, we're not taking the rigid, safe path here. CARDILE's been super explicit about using the talent they've gathered, the creativity they have in-house.
He really detailed their philosophy, didn't he?
Yeah.
Said they're working hard to explore our options, standard enough. But then came that line, the one that tells you everything about the commitment, both money and tech. It's a challenging task. Part of it is understanding where to bet. We are making some bets.
Ah, that phrase, making some bets. That just screams patient, long-term thinking, doesn't it? It confirms they know, they accept, that some development paths, well, they might not give positive results immediately,
Right.
but they see them as necessary steps to hit those ambitious final objectives. They seem genuinely prepared to maybe absorb a slower start in 26 if it means finding that ultimate dominant advantage later on, like a year or two down the road.
Okay, but hang on. Making some bets. Isn't that just, expensive F1 talk for we haven't quite figured it out yet? I mean, every team technically makes bets, right? Especially with new regs. What makes Aston Martin so different, maybe riskier than what Mercedes or Ferrari are doing?
It's the scale, I think. The scale of the bet. CARDILE isn't talking about like tiny wing adjustments here. He seems to be implying a fundamental concept choices, big architectural decisions. The subtext is they're likely throwing serious resources at several radically different design ideas at the same time, knowing full well that maybe 2 out of 3 could completely fail.
Oh.
Most established teams, the legacy ones, they tend to prioritize safer incremental gains. Why? Because their management, their structure, it often punishes big failures. But Aston Martin, under Lawrence Stroll, it really looks like they're giving the technical team the safety net, the backing, to chase these high-risk, potentially high-reward concepts.
Okay, let's ground this a bit. There's a perfect recent example that shows exactly why this kind of patience can pay off massively.
Yeah.
We just need to look back at the start of the 2022 rules era. It's like the ultimate proof that the fastest car on day one isn't always the one that dominates later.
Absolutely. Think back to winter testing, 2022. Mercedes arrives.
Oh yeah, the no side pods.
Exactly. The revolutionary no-side pod concept. And, let's be fair, a priori, on paper, everyone, us included, probably thought, wow, this is clever. Reduced weight, less drag.
Seems like a silver bullet.
It did. But the concept fundamentally had issues. They battled porpoising, performance problems all year long. Just got that one single win in Brazil, remember? They kind of peaked too early by being maybe too clever in one specific area and lost the overall car balance.
And meanwhile, Ferrari.
Right.
They looked like they were going to walk away with it right at the start. Fastest package out of the box, Leclerc winning in Bahrain, Australia, fighting Max hard in Saudi. They had the pace, the reliability early on.
They absolutely did. But then there was Red Bull. They came in with a totally different concept, ADRIAN Newey's design philosophy, right? And crucially, they were not the fastest immediately. Their early season had reliability hiccups. The car was a bit overweight.
Yep, I remember that.
But this is the key point. That specific design concept allowed for way more development potential down the line. That long-term view meant they fixed the weight, unlocked performance, and just started dominating by midseason. And then kept dominating through the rest of 22, all of 23, and the start of 24.
So the takeaway for you listening is pretty clear. Red Bull proved it. Starting with a foundation that lets you develop and gain over the long haul is way better than a concept that's quick initially but hits a development ceiling. And the timing here is just, well, it's impossible to ignore. We know Adrian Newey, the guy behind that successful 2022 long game for Red Bull. He's now involved with Aston Martin.
It looks very much like a deliberate attempt to replicate that winning strategy.
Okay, Let's switch gears slightly, but it's all connected. Let's talk about the innovation mandate itself, because this is where the real risk lies for Aston Martin.
Right, and CARDILE is so explicit about this philosophy. He said, we want to be the reference, not a clone of the existing reference.
That's a powerful statement.
It really is. He's saying, copying the winner, whether it's Red Bull now or Mercedes back then, it just guarantees you'll always be a follower. Always second best in terms of ideas. You can't win titles like that.
And this isn't just CARDILE's personal dream, right? He made it clear. This vision, this long-term plan, it's shared. Agreed upon with the big names, Andy Cowell, ADRIAN, NEWEY, and critically, the owner, Lawrence Stroll.
That's huge. That unified front is vital. It protects the engineers when inevitably things get tough early on.
Protects them from the chaos. He mentioned chaos, didn't he?
He did. He said to execute this kind of radical approach, they need to do things differently. And yeah, that might involve some chaos. But he believes they need to manage that chaos because ultimately it fosters more innovation than a, quote, rigid and extremely structured organization. That rigidity, he implies, just stifles creativity.
Managed chaos. Easy to say, incredibly hard to actually do in F1.
Oh, absolutely.
Because if those first couple of races in 2026 don't go to plan, that chaos suddenly gets labeled disorganization by everyone outside the team.
Yep, pressure ramps up instantly.
And it takes immense trust from leadership, the kind someone like NEWEY probably commands, to shield that creative freedom when the results aren't there immediately.
It really does. And this brings us to the cultural element, which CARDILE highlighted. He stressed the team will not crucify anyone for an error. He said there's nothing wrong with changing your mind, changing course, because the ultimate goal is winning, not being right on day one.
That sounds quite different from some F1 team environments we know about.
Well, think about where CARDILE came from, Ferrari. Historically, that team is known for incredibly high-pressure internal politics, environments where mistakes weren't always tolerated, and technical leaders could easily become scapegoats.
So saying we won't crucify errors is more than just, like, a nice HR slogan. It's a strategic necessity for the kind of innovation they're aiming for.
Precisely. If you punish people for radical ideas that fail, you basically guarantee they'll play it safe next time. Conservatism becomes the default.
Which is the opposite of what they need for 2026.
Exactly. And CARDILE summed it up. It's about winning in the end. That protection for the engineers is non-negotiable if you want them to take the necessary risks. And we should probably also mention their partners here quickly. Honda, doing the power unit, they're reportedly looking at different battery solutions to really max out the new MGUK rules. And Aramco is pushing hard on the sustainable fuel side. So it seems like the whole ecosystem around Aston Martin is aligned on finding differentiated, maybe higher risk solutions.
Okay, that covers the car and the culture. But F1 always comes down to the human element, too. The driver. You can't talk Aston Martin's future without talking Fernando Alonso. Flavio Briatore was recently singing his praises, incredibly high praise, calling him a beast.
He did. Briatore's never shy.
And Briatore claimed that if Alonso had a McLaren or a Red Bull this year, he'd absolutely be fighting for the title.
He's probably right about the McLaren, I think.
Do you reckon?
Yeah, I mean, look at how well Piastri and Norris are doing. It seems clear Alonso in that car would likely be right at the sharp end, probably leading the championship contention. The Red Bull scenario, that's a bit more complicated, maybe.
Why is that? If he's a beast, surely he'd manage.
Well, Alonso is phenomenal, no doubt. But the Red Bull car, it's famously, almost notoriously, developed around Max Verstappen's very unique driving style.
Right. The pointy front end, loose rear.
Exactly. Max loves that super reactive front axle, a rear end that's deliberately less stable than most drivers prefer. It gives him incredible rotation, but you need immense skill to handle it right on that knife edge, especially at high speed. Now, Alonso is brilliant with loose cars, always has been, but jumping into a car so specifically tailored to someone else, even for him, it's an open question how quickly he'd be totally comfortable in extracting the absolute maximum. He'd get there, probably fight at the top eventually, but it might not be instant.
So even for a world-class driver, the car's fundamental character matters hugely.
It does. It needs to work with you, not against you.
Okay, let's tie the driver back to this whole strategy, though. CARDILE promises they'll go well next year. But what does well actually mean in F1 terms? Podiums, wins, a title fight. And then there's Alonso himself. He also said recently if he has a good car next year, maybe retirement becomes a more concrete option. But again, what's good? Is it podiums? Is it wins? Or does he need a proper championship fight to stick around? He didn't really define it.
And that slightly vague language, well, Good. I think that's quite deliberate. It's smart, actually. They're managing expectations, setting up a kind of buffer zone.
Oh, okay.
So if 2026 does start a bit slow, they can point back and say, look, we told you we were making bets. We said some things might not work immediately.
Right. Trust the process.
Exactly. It's a strategic way to buy themselves time. Time from the media, time from the shareholders, maybe even time from Alonso himself, so the team doesn't just crumble under the pressure if results aren't instant.
Okay, so let's zoom out for the big picture here. What this really boils down to, for you listening, is that Aston Martin is making this enormous organizational bet. They're betting that patience, radical innovation, specifically avoiding being a mere clone, and this risk-tolerant culture championed by CARDILE, NEWEY, Stroll, that this combination will deliver success eventually. They're basically trying to repeat the Red Bull 2022 playbook, play the long game for the championship, not just the first few races of the new era.
Well said. And that leads us perfectly to a final thought, something provocative perhaps for you to mull over. CARDILE was crystal clear. The goal isn't being right at the start, it's winning in the end. So given the huge investment, financial, technical, cultural, and given Fernando Alonso has sort of linked his future to the car's performance, how long is Aston Martin really willing to wait for that end?
Right.
What level of performance in 2026? Is it just consistent podiums, or does it have to be a genuine title fight? What would actually validate this incredibly risky strategy? Enough to keep a competitive beast like Alonso happy and fully committed.
That's the multi-million-dollar question, isn't it? Fantastic analysis, as always. All right, that's all the time we have for this deep dive. If you enjoyed this breakdown and want more like it, make sure you subscribe and maybe leave a comment on the Dry Zone channel. We really appreciate the engagement. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.